Hello, good evening. 9 people have been arrested and 4 others taken to hospital after an illegal rave in East Croydon.
Officers put in cordons around the area to turn revellers away, but another 200 the aftermath
in the early
of
hours
an
of the morning,
all-night
on an
party.
isolated
Sound
stretch of
equipment
coast,
seized
the
by
Norfolk police helicopter comes across the
to break
illegal
up the
party.
party at a warehouse near Leeds. The partygoers later made allegations of police brutality.
The term rave first came into use in the late 50s Britain as a name for wild bohemian parties of the time that were famously kicking off in Soho, London. It was then briefly revived by youth mod culture in the late 1960s. But what rave is known and associated with today was not born until the 1980s with the birth of electronic music. A wave of psychedelic and other electronic dance music emerged, most notably acid house. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, news media and tabloids devoted an increasing amount of coverage to the hedonistic acid house and rave scene, focusing on its association with psychedelic drugs and clubs. The sensationalist nature of the coverage may have contributed to the banning of acid house during its heyday from radio, television and retail outlets in the United Kingdom. But why is rave culture shadowed by such negative connotations? It was Thatcher who declared war on raves in the 80s, but it wasn't until the Public Order Act of 1994 which banned anything over a small group listening to a repetitive beat that made raves illegal. However, this hasn't stopped the rave scene to grow and develop. By the 1990s, genres such as acid house, old school jungle, house music, techno and electronica were all being featured at raves, both large and small. These were events which were attracting thousands of people. So, why in a society with so many legal clubs are people still taking to private property and populated rural areas to rave? Well, in the 1980s, at a time of declining union movements and the lack of jobs for the working youth, raves sparked a set-in for unification. Today, in the 21st century, the euphoric atmosphere only seems to bring people together. Still, understandably, the effects of illegal raves can impact negatively on society. But do they offer a way to bring people together?
It's good to have something outside of the monotony to look forward to. I think it sort of serves the role that religion once served in society, in the sense that you have sort of ecstatic experiences, ecstatic communal experiences that make the rest of your life sort of seem more worthwhile in the wake of that sort of experience. Obviously, drugs play some role in this. I've just been reading a book about the history of raving that talks about how ecstasy is sort of responsible for the way that the culture orients itself towards being together in spaces. It's now evolved into just a place where the communal norms center around togetherness and like kindness and respectfulness. And also where there aren't a lot of people who are very belligerently drunk, which I think makes it a kinder social space.
Due to its secrecy, many in mainstream know little about the rave subculture other than the stereotypical portrayal of the crazy party and drug use. The repetitive nature of the music, the long hours dancing, the semi-legal secret location, and the ingestion of psychoactive substances differentiate raves from other youth parties. When combined, these features are specifically designed to promote feelings of connectedness, spirituality, and a state of ecstasy. Rave offers an arena of entertainment which is invisible and uncontrolled, escaping from surveillance and order. Perhaps it's the illegal element which attracts ravers. The idea of clashing with authorities and upsetting the mundane routine of society. Then again, maybe it's something as simple as the wide variety of music that is so attracting.
Rave, at least initially, was a very countercultural thing, and it originated in Black and mostly queer communities in Chicago and Detroit in like the late 90s, and so those communities were already pretty marginalized and excluded from the mainstream. And then when it was adopted in England, which I guess is sort of the next phase of raving, it was largely sort of young, I guess, lower class people. And so I think it occupied a similar cultural position as like punk music, in that it conceived of itself as very consciously anti-establishment, and so that alienated like people who are running more mainstream media outlets. Now I think that a lot of the antipathy towards raving is a function of the really terrible, trashy electronic music culture that has largely been propagated by my countrymen to a public who doesn't have a very discerning understanding of the differences between different kinds of electronic music. If you see a bunch of teenage girls in glow-in-the-dark bras at the Electronic Daisy Festival and then conflate the rest of electronic music with that, you're going to have like a fairly negative understanding of what electronic music culture is.
Rave culture understandably rejects the chart and club classics. DJs will concentrate on the atmosphere and setting they want to achieve by the music they play. In the early 90s, rave culture exploded with the availability of cheap computers and sampling technology, causing a punk-style do-it-yourself revolution. The resulting upsurge spawned the independent labels and home studio-based artists that we see today. The culture offers a platform for any home producer, DJ or enthusiast the chance to set up their own crews and events.
So our crew is 2 systems, both in North London, and we basically just collaborated to have a new crew, which is under a new name that then throws parties themselves. You set it all up. Someone will be playing some good tunes, and you've had a few beers, and you think, actually, this is mad, like, and then you like kind of take it as a spectacle. You think like you want to tell everyone like, oh, that's my rig, that's my sound system. You know what I mean? Like, there's definitely more satisfaction out of throwing your own party rather than doing sound for another crew. So the whole thing is just, you know, a lot trickier than it used to be. Since late 80s through to now, the way that the police deal with it is exactly the same, which is treat it like a riot, and that's not exactly how you should treat, you know, a few thousand people. In the media, you see all the bad bits and everything like that, but obviously the media don't get to see all the good bits because the good bits aren't newsworthy. So the thing about a rave is that you've got a group of people there who are quite likely and almost potentially definitely off their nuts, just inside a building having a party, and it's like a crocodile. If you poke it with a stick, it's going to just jump out and try and, you know, jump back. And because maybe these kids aren't like the bad kids, they're not thinking like, oh, let's start a fight, let's start a party, but nearly all the time the environment is never aggressive.
Whatever the case, the police and mainstream media don't see it as an acceptable outlet and are keen to find and place blame on organisers and promoters. We can see that all ravers aren't all negative and aggressive like the media portrays. So in a society with so many judgments and taboos, maybe it's time to look at how we treat raves.